Hey, it's Casey. This week's video, I wanted to touch on some stretches that you can do if you are a runner or a bicyclist. I have a lot of students that come from this type of background and incorporate yoga into their routines to kind of counterbalance all of the tightening that is created from doing these types of exercises. So if you are a runner, if you are a bicyclist, or maybe you just do it occasionally, you may start to feel a lot of tension afterwards. Maybe it's not immediately after a run or a bike ride, but sometimes these tight areas can start to create more tension in the body with time. So maybe it's the day after, maybe it's accumulation, and over time you start to feel more stiffness into the hamstrings, into the hips. So I wanted to give some stretches for you that you can practice that will help to kind of counterbalance all of these exercises for you. So first of all, before you actually do your exercise, so whatever it is that you're doing, it's important to get a stretch in before you start. But in my opinion, doing more static stretching, so static stretching is more holding poses, releasing into it, is not recommended prior to an activity because you are loosening up so much, you're going deep into the body, that a lot of times when you go running or something like that, your body is so loose that it's actually really easy to put a lot of impact on your joints. So I wouldn't recommend taking really deep stretches for long periods of time before you go on a run or before you go on a bike ride. I would definitely suggest taking more dynamic stretching. So movement, maybe kicking through the legs. If you do take stretches, make them quick, just kind of melt into it, come out. Basically, you just want to start to create a little bit of elongation through the muscles, but more so warming the muscles. So maybe taking a walk before and just kind of maybe speed walking a little bit, just kind of start to feel everything start to warm up. And then just take a quick little stretching routine before you start, but nothing really deep or too long of a period of time. Otherwise, over time, you might start to feel more tension from taking that approach. This video is specific to after you're done. How do we release so that we don't feel so tight or tense at the end of our day or through our week or however long you carry on to this tension? Stretching is so important, and I know I used to hear that a lot when I was growing up and I was into soccer and we had to do stretching and I didn't take it seriously. And now as I do activities and I feel that stretch afterwards, I really can feel my body thanking me for bringing myself back to a neutral ground. So I'm taking care of myself. So whatever I'm doing, there's a counter pose or counterbalancing that I can find to bring that balance back for myself so that I'm not holding on to unnecessary tension when all I have to do is take a few minutes to stretch. So after you're done with your run, common areas you may feel tense through the hips, through the hamstrings, the quadriceps, the calf muscles, okay? These are very typical areas, a lot of lower body. So to kind of target these areas, I would start from the ground up. So I'm going to focus a lot right now on how to open up into the calf muscles and the Achilles. So what you can do, if you have a mat, you can use a mat or you can use a blanket or anything that you can roll up. So I'm going to take my mat and I'm going to roll it up kind of tight so that I'm creating a little bit of a lift from the floor. Okay, so taking your mat, or whatever it is that you have, feet hips width, and you're just going to step the balls of the feet up. So notice that my feet are at an incline here, okay? Now from here, you're going to lift your spine, and you're just going to hinge and release over. Now if your hands don't reach towards the floor, put anything underneath your hands, like a box or cans or books, whatever you need, and just take your hands there. Or you can just drop your hands to the floor if that feels good for you. Now, if keeping the legs straight is feeling too uncomfortable to reach the hands down, you can always bend the knees. Okay, you're still going to feel a good stretch here. Okay, if you can work on straightening the legs, straighten the legs. Now, sometimes we have issues with hyperextending or locking the knees. I used to be a knee locker, and it took a lot of time for me to train my body not to lock the joints. Okay, it's really important that we don't lock the joints, because then we're dumping all of that weight into the joint rather than using the muscles to support the joints. Okay, so from here, you're just going to melt over. Not only are you going to feel a deep opening through the hamstrings, but this should target all the way down through the calf muscles and, like I said, down into the Achilles, which is really important because you don't typically feel these sensations when you're in just a normal forward fold. So just enjoy here. Feel the breath. And I would suggest holding here for anywhere 30 seconds to a minute. And when you're ready, hands to the hips, you can just come all the way up, step off your mat or your blanket. And go ahead and roll this out here. Okay, so you should feel a nice opening through the backs of the legs by now. Okay. And then I think working into the hips, the outer glutes, is a really good place to start from here. So I'm going to take you into half pigeon, which is one of my absolute favorites. I teach this in pretty much every single one of my classes. So you can take downward dog, and if you're not familiar with downward dog, you can always start in tabletop position too. I just personally think it's a little easier to start here. Your body doesn't have to have the exact same shape, but as long as we can get to the same pose together, then we'll be fine. Okay, you're going to take your right knee, and you're going to pull the right knee forward until you drop it behind your right wrist. So I'm going to show you from this side, because this is really important. So when I bring my knee forward, it's behind my right wrist. So same knee behind the same hand, okay? A lot of times when I cue this pose in a class, the knee ends up somewhere in the center, sometimes even over to the side, okay? Really try to find that external rotation. So the knee comes out towards that same side wrist, and the foot comes in front of the groin. It may feel natural to have it back behind you, but pull the foot forward as much as you can, and then sink the hips back. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the side here. Okay, so as I pull that right knee forward, I'm dropping the knee behind my right wrist, foot is in front of the groin, and I'm just going to slide that foot back until I sink in. Now you may be more up here, okay, you may feel a lot of tension in through the hips, and if you do, stay right there, okay, just find that sweet spot. You want to make sure that your leg extends directly behind your hip. You don't want it to be out to the side, which that can typically happen as well. Now, a really common thing to happen when you're here is you may feel a want to roll to one side with the hips, okay? If you feel that happening, you can take books or blanket and you can kind of wedge it underneath your hip so that your hips stay level. I want you to imagine that if you were to set a marble onto your lower back, that it would stay still. It wouldn't want to roll to either side. So once you have that position, to protect your front knee, because there is a little bit of tension as you sit down onto it, flex your foot. Okay, by flexing the foot, you're now protecting your knee. Okay, and then from here, you're just going to slowly try to lower yourself down. Maybe you come onto the forearms. Maybe you stack your fists and lower your head onto your fists. Maybe you come all the way down to the floor. Okay, and just breathe there and hold. I would suggest that one a couple minutes if you can on each side. It may feel really uncomfortable, especially after a run or a bike ride. But discomfort is good. It allows you to move through and help to release that tension. Okay. Now, if you are dealing with any type of knee injury, this might be too much pressure on your knee. Okay, so I'm just going to give you a modification. But if you are taking this variation, just make sure you do both sides equal amount of time. Okay. If that's too much, the modification is coming onto your back. Okay. And you can just take this one in general if you like it better. I personally like pigeon pose because I like that extra weight being pressed down. But otherwise, if you're on your back, you're going to lift that leg up. You're going to cross the ankle over the thigh and just feel the knee open away from you. And maybe this is enough right here, or you can lift the legs and reach through to grab the back of the thigh or the front of the shin. Okay, and once again, you're flexing the feet and just pulling in as much as you can. It doesn't matter how far you get, but you're just working your edge, and you'll feel that deep opening through that outer hip. Okay, so that will be the modification. So that one's a really deep release. It's glute, it's the hips. There's a lot of goodness going on with that one. So far we've targeted a lot through the hamstrings, the calves, the Achilles, the hips, the glutes. One that I really personally love, I'll start actually with some side lunges, and then I'll work ourselves into Froggy pose. And you may be familiar with Froggy pose, and if not, you're welcome, because it's amazing, but it's also a pose that might give us a lot of resistance. So come to a stand, and feet maybe about 4 feet apart. You can kind of measure your arms width and try to get them nice and wide. So from here, angle your toes out, heels in. Okay, you're just going to lower your hands down. If they don't come all the way to the floor, once again, you can lower down to whatever you have, books or boxes, anything really that is going to take that height up for you. And then from here, you're just going to bend one knee. You're just going to walk the hands over, and maybe you're all the way up here, and that's okay. Over time, work yourself into slowly lowering, okay? Once again, doesn't matter where you stop as long as it's your edge. Now, natural tendency might to be flex the foot and lift lift the toes. And this is going to be a deep stretch in through the hamstring. So if that feels good, you can hold there. But also give yourself time to keep the foot down, because now you're working more in through the inner hip and through the groin. So you're just getting 2 different sensations here. Enjoy them both if they both feel good for you. Okay, and you're going to hold here maybe about 30 seconds, and then lift yourself to center, bend the opposite, sink in. Okay. Once again, play with your variations. Do the one that feels good for you. Hold there and breathe. Okay. So now that we've kind of loosened up into the hips, you're going to come to center. You're going to drop your knees down. Okay. And starting in tabletop position, you're going to walk your knees out. Now, if you have any tension of your knees being on a hard surface, take a blanket and pad the flooring so that you have a little cushion underneath you, and that can help a lot. Okay, so if you have tender joints, I definitely suggest getting some padding. So from tabletop, start to walk your knees as wide as you can get them. Okay, and maybe it's not that far. Once again, it doesn't really matter as long as you're listening to your body. Okay, so really important with this one is the positioning of the legs. I'm going to see if I can get a good angle here that will help to best demonstrate. So when you take the knees out nice and wide, okay, your natural tendency will probably be to have the feet close together. So it's creating more of a diamond shape with the legs. Okay, so I want you to try to avoid that and bring the calves so they're parallel to each other. Okay, and then this is called Froggy pose because your legs literally look like frog legs. So flex your feet so the toes point out to the side. You may feel that you want to have your feet flat onto the ground. Okay, once again, protect your knees, toes out, and this will add more activation into the hips. Now from here, maybe you stay on your hands, maybe you lower down onto a box, a blanket, a pillow, whatever you want. Maybe you come down to the forearms, or maybe you come all the way down to the floor. Now, you may notice when you come into this pose, your hips may want to sink back, or your hips might want to come forward, okay? You want one straight line from your knee to your hips to the opposite knee. So once you find that shape, just melt yourself in as best as you can. Hold here and breathe. I would suggest holding this one for about a minute or so if you can. And then when you're done with this pose, okay, you may feel a lot of tension in this one. The best way I would suggest coming out of this one is to come up onto your hands and as slowly and as mindfully as you can, just start to walk the knees back in. Once you have that, you can come to a seated position, drop the hands, and just rock the knees side to side. And this will give a good release through the inner hips since you just did a lot of stretching there. Okay. And then stretching out the quadriceps. So I'm going to give a couple stretches for this one. One of them is my favorite, and if it's not accessible to your body, there's another variation that I will show you that you're probably more familiar with as well. So if you can, come to a seat in a hero's pose. So hero's pose is sitting back onto your heels, okay? So for some of us, we may have really tight in through the hips, and maybe we feel tension into our knees, or maybe we feel tension into the tops of our feet, into the ankles. So if that's the case, you don't have to take this one. I will give another variation after I'm done explaining this one, okay? But if you are sitting onto the feet, you may feel already a deep stretch into the front of the hips and into the quadriceps. So maybe you just stay here and you enjoy that stretch. And if you want to take it deeper, you can just start to walk the hands back. By walking the hands back, you're now intensifying that stretch, okay? You may feel the need to want to splay the knees wide. Try to keep the knees in towards each other as best as you can, okay? Now, if you want to take it deeper, you can always separate your feet a little wider and sit yourself in between the feet, but the knees try to stay together as fast as you can. So it doesn't matter if you're sitting on the heels or if you're sitting at the floor, you're going to feel the same sensations. Just listen to your body as to which one feels best for you. So once again, maybe you sit back, and if you want to take it deeper, just start to bend the elbows. And maybe you bend the elbows here and this is enough. Maybe you can come all the way down onto the forearms, okay? If you want to take it even deeper, you can walk it in, and as slowly as you can, okay, just lower yourself down to the ground and just breathe here. So really intense stretch to the front side of the body, okay? If that's too much, stop at any area where it felt enough for you, where you found your resistance. And then coming back up, lift, walk back up onto those elbows, the hands, come back up, come forward, and then you can kind of just extend out and shake it out. Okay. Now, if any of those variations felt too intense for you, you can always come to a standing position. Take your hand to a wall or work the balance. Bend a knee, grab the foot, pull the foot in, and make sure you drop the knee down towards the ground. On this one, it might be kind of natural to pull the knee out to the side. As we draw in, try to point the knee down instead. Okay. And as you pull the foot in, try to press the hips slightly forward. You'll feel more intensity here. So that's a good place to go if it's too intense to sit onto the knees. Once again, just that pressure downward can be a little strenuous. And then just make sure you get the other side. And it's okay if you're right here. And even if grabbing the foot feels like too much, you can take like a belt or a scarf, loop it around the foot, and then hold onto that scarf and just pull the foot in as much as you can, trying to point the knee down, hips pull forward, okay? Once you have that, just shake it out. And then my last recommendation would just be a nice, gentle forward fold. And for this forward fold, pull the flesh from underneath your sit bones, lift your spine, and then release over. Now your hands don't have to touch your feet. I feel like that's a huge misconception to forward folds. Your hands can stay at your shins. If you do want to work on a little bit of resistance, once again, take that strap or scarf, bring it around your feet, and pull the scarf to lengthen your spine. A lot of times we think that the end result is just to reach the feet or reaching our head towards our legs. And oftentimes when we do this, we create this rounding sensation to get closer, okay? Instead of that, lift yourself up higher and feel the same sensations of lengthening the spine. So notice I've taken the rounding out by pulling up through my chest. And right here, I'm feeling just as much sensation, if not more, and I'm no longer compromising my spine by allowing it to round while I'm pulling on it, okay? So finding extension is always going to be more beneficial for you, okay? And then just work here. Over time, you'll start to feel that gap of space kind of close in. And just hold for a few breaths, and when you're done, slowly lift yourself up, bend the knees, shake it out, and you should be good from there. I feel like we target a lot of the areas that often feel a lot of strain, so I hope that that helps to release some tension for you, and you can use that after any run, any bike ride. And practicing those on your own, over time you'll start to notice you feel way less tense after your activities. I teach a lot of these classes specific to my students who I know are in these types of activities, and the type of release that they feel after they leave the classes is absolutely amazing. So I hope you utilize these exercises, these stretches, to help bring balance into your daily lives. So let me know if you have any questions, any suggestions, and I hope you enjoy. Thank you for watching. Namaste.